lot of words. Now this one here, I didn't look it up, but whenever there's that kind of a pattern, this is not a typical set of sounds in English. We don't typically put those together, especially when there's nothing it can be related to. I mean, scrump, it doesn't have a meaning in today's English, but it's possible at one time it was used to describe something. So, with all of these, we can easily divide them into two groups. There are words that are related to other words, and there are words that really you will only ever see on their own. There's nothing to link to them. And these are the words here. I would recommend don't waste your time with them. I mean, they're fun. You know, if you read it somewhere and you want to learn it, great. But you will have a hard time linking it to something else. And usually the spelling does not make a lot of sense, because there's a lot of sounds in there, and if there's no root that you can relate it to, it's the kind of word where often people will misunderstand you.
So if my Western friend made a cake for me, and he invited to review or to judge the cake. So you recommend that I shouldn't say scrumptious?
Probably should not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
The other words are easier to use because they're easier to make relationships to. So it's easier to use them correctly. Luscious, we have lush, we have a clear idea of what the sound should be. It's easy to make that link, so when you use it, you'll have a clearer memory of how it should sound, right, and what it should mean. Whereas with a word like scrumptious, I mean, lots of fun, but if there's any danger of the other person misunderstanding you and being offended, then it's not a word you should use. So, that doesn't mean, you know, if it's a close friend and you're just playing around and you can use scrumptious, and if you misunderstand, it's not a problem, right? Then that's okay. But for formal language, be careful with them. Use other words instead. Now this one here, this one actually has a history to it. How many of you know the history of the Western, like the Latin and the Greek gods? You know, like there's Zeus, and Poseidon, Hercules, or the Roman Heracles, right? How did the gods stay immortal? Does anybody know that story?
We probably heard about that, but we don't know too deep the detail of every story. But we know the structure of that story. For example, just some of the names that you just mentioned.
Have you heard of this special drink that if a human, a normal mortal person drinks it, he can become like the gods? It's supposed to, if you're badly hurt, it will heal your body. And if you drink it when you are healthy, then you can become like the gods. You can become immortal and powerful and all of that. That's ambrosia. It's that special stuff. Some people have called it the word nectar. Now nectar, we see in a couple places. There's a kind of peach that we call a nectarine. You know, in English, a peach, taozi, right? A peach usually has hair on it. So the kind that does not have any hair is called a nectarine. Okay? And nectar is usually used to talk about, you know, in a flower, the sweet stuff that the bee comes to get. The bee takes out the juice to make honey, right? That's nectar, okay? So it's supposed to be some sweet, very energy-giving kind of material. So we talk about this as the nectar of the gods, okay? And so this word ambrosia has a huge history to it. And the meaning it has is very, very significant. So if you were to describe a drink as ambrosial, it's not just delicious. It's not just savory or relishable. It's more than scrumptious. Of all of these words, this is probably the most powerful meaning. Because if you say it's ambrosial, you're saying this is what the gods drink.
That's strong?
Well, that's what the meaning comes from.
Oh, okay.
So, a lot of people misuse words because they don't care about where they come from. But if you use that word, that's its meaning.
Oh.
Most native peace speakers don't use this word. So the ones who do use it probably have a better idea of it. But then again, there's always some people who just use it whenever they want. However, one of the problems with synonyms is that if you search for vocabulary using your little friend or your big friend, it rarely tells you, use this word instead of use this word. Use this word in this context. Don't use this word. It doesn't tell you that unless you ask. Which is why when you learn vocabulary, if you're bored, you can start writing stuff down. When you learn vocabulary, you really need to take the time to look deeper. Because if you just look for synonyms, you get a list of words, you just start picking them, you're going to end up causing yourself a lot of embarrassment. Right? Because they all have some relationship with this word delicious. They all have a similar meaning, a similar use, but they're not the same. And if you use the wrong one because, hey, this looks cool, I like the way it looks, I like the way it sounds, nobody else knows this word, I'm going to use it, then you end up embarrassing yourself. And you make your company look bad by having a box which proudly says, surprisingly palatable. And then you get foreigners coming to your shop, and they look at that, and they turn around and they walk out again. Right? So, if you are going to use English words, use them well, that's all.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you remember when was your last time to see the word ambrosial?
Honestly, I don't think I ever have.
Oh.
Yeah.
In novel? No.
No, I can't think of anything where the story would have used that word.
Okay.
So, but that's the thing about vocabulary. You see, some of these words I looked up for the word history. The only one out of this list that I was completely unfamiliar with, to be honest, was this one here. This one I had to check. All right? But with this here, all I needed was to see, I know this word, I know it's an adjective. It doesn't make a difference that, oh, it's my language, I'm a native speaker, I know. It's not that. If you learn how the words work, then when you see a part that you can recognize, yeah, then you can make it work for you. It's all about the patterns. So you can do the same thing. It will take you longer to get the same number of words. That's okay. You might have some mistakes along the way. That's okay. But if you can learn, not just memorize, if you can learn how the words work, then you learn more than just one word. You learn the whole system. So, any other questions about our list of Yeah.
The last one, you haven't talked
Oh,
about.
gustable, yeah. It's basically the same as tasty, because that's what it means in another language. It's from the Spanish gustar. Which we do see in English use in some places. If you ever see somebody, or if you hear somebody use the expression with gusto, this is directly from that idea. And let's look at the negative. When food is so terrible, it's not just unpalatable, right? Like for many foreigners, if they go to Sankan, the Chodofu street in Taipei, they go there, they are not just feeling it's unappetizing, their feeling is much stronger. They are that's the word.
Wow, excellent. Wow.
So we have this idea in English as the negative. Now this is a common pattern as well. There are a lot of places where we have only the negative. And part of the reason is the same thing as in Chinese. 葡萄, 葡萄子, 樱桃, 樱桃子, 桃子. 字为什么不一样? Why is the 字 in 桃子 not about the same? It's the same character, right? But in a 葡萄子, the 字 is the part that you don't eat. In a 桃子, what's the 字? With a lot of words like that, one syllable is not enough. 一个音节不够, right? It's not enough to hold its value in a conversation. So, for words like that, in Chinese, 好 is the meaning. That's the word that we want to use. But it's only one syllable. It's not long enough. So we add a syllable, 桃子. Right? The 字 doesn't have any meaning. It's just to make it longer. There are a number of places in English where we have a similar problem. That gust from the Spanish, gustar, that gust there, it doesn't have enough. It's only one syllable. So we can use the negative, disgust. We can use other longer forms, gustable, but we don't have just gust. Now there is actually a word gust, but it's a completely different meaning. It refers to wind. So if you look up the word gust, it refers to a blowing of the wind, right? A blast of wind. That's a gust. It has a completely different meaning and source from that one.